Many moons ago, I asked the Grey Gaming community for their favorite Fallout 3 DLC. To my surprise, Mothership Zeta was actually pretty despised. Now, Fallout 3 was much more consistent in the quality of its DLC than Fallout 4, no 3/4 majority voting for the same DLC here. But even then, I've heard quite a bit of hate for Mothership Zeta in the community over the years, and I've never really got it. I always had fond memories of blasting aliens, escaping captivity, nuking Brahmin, Fallout stuff. You know what? We've never actually really been able to do any of that, have we? Okay, the nuking Brahmin part, sure, but I've never considered Mothership Zeta to be a weak DLC by any means. Granted, it's been several years since I've given Mothership Zeta a go, so maybe my big boy brain has a different opinion from the one Primate Grey formed several years ago. Maybe it's time I go see for myself whether Mothership Zeta is really that bad. Now, naturally, I'm going to need some sort of objective ranking system to determine if I'm just being defensive or there's legitimately cases that can be made for Mothership Zeta being a great addition to Fallout 3, so I'll be brushing off the old Grey's Is It Good scoring table. I'll rate Mothership Zeta on 4 key categories: storyline, explorable area, new object usefulness, and expansion to gameplay mechanics. Each category will be ranked from 1 to 5, 1 being absolute trash, and 5 being the sweat that falls from God Overlord Todd's brow. Okay, I couldn't even finish that sentence with a straight face. 5 being a pure joy to behold, resulting in a total possible Grey's Is It Good score of 20. Also, as a new addition to this DLC review, I'm going to start including a table showing where other DLC from various Fallout games have ranked throughout the series. And before I begin, the storyline section of this video is naturally going to have super duper spoilers, so skip to this timestamp if you're sensitive about that sort of thing. So we start as most Fallout DLC do. We get a strange radio broadcast on our Pip-Boy that leads us to an area of the map we typically would have pretty much no reason to visit otherwise. Only this time, it's different. There is a crashed UFO, and lying just in front of the shattered cockpit is an honest-to-atom alien, and some sort of little glowy objects littered about. Moving it a bit closer to investigate turns out to be a big mistake, because suddenly we start floating as we're surrounded with a bright, non-green light, and things go hazy. After a bit of the usual alien abduction fare, medical experimentation, probing, and the like, we're dumped in a cell with another abductee, Soma. Soma does a pretty good job of expositioning us, telling us what's what. The aliens strip the lone survivor of clothing, weapons, everything except for the computer strapped to their arm. That's not a plot hole or anything, especially with the fact that Soma got to keep her clothes. Soma's pretty spunky, at least the way she delivers her lines has a certain flair to it, but she pretty much says she's not here to make friends, and she means it, because you'd be forgiven for thinking we just need to earn her trust for a while and she'll open up. Nope, she just doesn't say jack about herself, where she was abducted from, where home is, whether she has a family waiting for her down there, her goals, ambitions, nothing. As far as DLC characters go, she's about as forgettable as they come. But still, she has a plan for getting us out before the Claw comes to drag us off to Adam knows where. We just have to start a fight until the guards show up and then jump the alien guards and break out. Okay, nobody said it was a good plan. There is no option for stealth hacker types to open up a panel and cut the hardline to the mainframe.
You could cut the hardline at the mainframe.
No way to sneak around the guards to get to the place they dumped all our gear to re-equip. Just start a boring punch brawl without killing Soma in the process and hope the aliens are invested enough in their guinea pig's welfare that they come and break it up. Not the strongest start, but let's stick with it. We can explore the detention deck and find an Enclave officer who wasn't as lucky as we were, and now we at least have some clothing. Too bad it's a stupid Enclave officer's uniform, and not even a battle coat. Disgraceful. Still, at least the Lone Wanderer doesn't have to run around in their skivvies anymore, and we can set to work trying to find something with a little more reach than a shock baton, because I absolutely never waste a good playthrough on a melee build. There is a Rivet City security guard, which at first sounds awesome, like we might have an ally who can take a hit or two and tank for us. Nope, they just chatter about needing to wake up. I mean, this is understandable given the circumstances, but pretty useless to us. We could kill them and take their armor so we have more protection than an Enclave uniform, or, good karma characters are just sort of left abandoning them to their fates. All around the ship, we can find these stations filled with voice logs from abducted individuals. Weirdly, the log numbers do not seem to correspond with the chronological order in which the victims were abducted. They add a little world building, but mostly they just highlight the low standards voice actors had to meet for 2000's era Bethesda DLC.
They must need something from us.
Yeah, they need us for food or something. Oh my God, we're gonna be next.
Also, that and like 4 people did all voice acting for this entire DLC. Really broke the bank on this one, didn't you, Todd? For the time being, we're trapped in the detention area, but there's one more person trapped in here with us, a young girl named Sally, who apparently has had a tendency of breaking out and exploring the ship. So after blowing up a local energy reactor mob, Sally starts climbing through air ducts and opening doors for us. Sally is helpful, pretty excited about getting to explore the ship, and just being able to get out of herself for a while. Like, she's getting the same abuse as everyone else, but just sees this as a play date. I mean, one would have to imagine that even a kid would have to place a little more importance on the seriousness of this situation. Once again, I am not digging the personalities of these characters, but for totally different reasons. Soma's fully aware that they're fighting for their lives and is pretty much out for the survival of numero uno, but Sally's just like, yup, the aliens hurt me all the time and they get mad when I get loose and start exploring, but I love it when I get to break out and do the things that stands a pretty strong chance of netting me a healthy dose of negative reinforcement. Like, who wrote these characters? Wait, I'm already on page 2 of this summary and we still haven't even made it out of the detention block yet? Good lord, this DLC is already wearing out its welcome. Okay, let's get this over with. We start by making our way to an armory and get all of our stuff back that was confiscated and start working our way through the ship. But it quickly becomes apparent that Earth weapons only really work on the weaker aliens. Unfortunately, many of the Zetans are wearing some sort of semi-cloaking energy shield which renders VATS pretty much useless unless you can knock down the shield first. And this is heavily resistant to pretty much all Earth weapons, so it looks like we're still stuck pilfering the dead for their weapons. You know, normal Bethesda game stuff. I really want to express my thoughts on this requirement of the DLC, but I'll save it for new object usefulness and continue on for the time being. Sally leads us to a cryogenic freezing room because we need to enable some teleporters in order to reach the bridge so we can get back to Earth, and supposedly there's a spaceman here. Well, we arrive to find a cowboy, a samurai, a dead astronaut, and an American medic from the Anchorage campaign. People separated by thousands of miles in 3 dimensions and centuries in time, all brought here by the Zetans and frozen in time, and all wearing their clothes, and one of them is even still armed. What the hell is with the continuity of this DLC? There is absolutely no rhyme or reason to the aliens' decision to strip and disarm their victims. Why were we singled out? You know this is a absolutely contrived plot device to force a specific escape scenario. Anyway, for some reason, each person has a destiny that suggests that they need to be taken to a certain area of the ship for questing reasons. You don't have to bring them, but if you're going to travel with backup, it has to be a specific survivor for a specific area. Well, except for the dead guy, we just need his suit for an eventual spacewalk that we have to do. I won't spoil the exact goals for each section, mostly because I've already forgotten what I was supposed to be doing here, and I don't want to pour through 4 hours of recorded footage from 12 hours of gameplay for a refresher. But in any case, each mission takes us to a different area of this rather large and sprawling ship. I'll have more to say on the explorable area section, but for now, let's just keep chugging along. Once we make our way through all these sections so each of the frozen men can do their things, and a few bonus areas that aren't required but you can find some good loot and interesting shreds of world building here and there, it's finally time for our spacewalk, which is pretty cool but is also short-lived. Not that I'm complaining, I'm actually pretty thankful that it's just a slow, uneventful spacewalk instead of a bunch of bullet-spongy aliens swarming you outside the ship. Well, we reach an upper deck and activate a teleporter, and everyone makes it up to an observation deck where we can see the aliens have started firing some sort of super-powered death ray at Earth. Time to become big damn heroes.
Big damn heroes, sir! Ain't we just?
After exploring their weapons lab, where we discovered that the aliens are experimenting on humans to try and combine their DNA and ours, and ended up creating something that's even more unsettling than Fallout 3's interpretation on feral ghoul reavers, and finally, after overloading the death ray, we attack the bridge and wipe out the entire command crew, including the captain, only to discover they had time to send a distress signal, and now there's another mothership here ready to blow us into space dust, so now we have to fight them off. And wait, you're telling me we still have a death ray? So what was the point of overloading all those reactor thingies in the Death Ray Control Center and fighting off wave after wave of bullet sponge enemies? Okay, fine, whatever. We get to fight the enemy mothership off in a pseudo-turn-based puzzle battle, where we have to balance power between the shields and Death Ray and exchange fire with the other ship. And wouldn't you know it, this gaggle of primitives, post-apocalyptic scavengers, and children managed to defeat what I would have to assume is an experienced crew using systems that are fully versed in using controls that are labeled in their own language. Oh my... Okay, you guys, you know what? You win. For storyline, I will say this DLC does have tiny, teensy-weensy shreds of brilliance here and there. I never thought I could be terrified by a giddy-up buttercup until I ran into the aftermath of what one did to a bunch of wastelanders after passing through an entire warehouse of giddy-up buttercups that the aliens are apparently manufacturing as a sort of mechanical army. I did feel for people like Elliot, the medic whose entire squad was abducted, and the shock he felt when he discovered their fates. Some turned into hybrid abominations, some terminally ill due to the experiments that they underwent. The samurai is cute for a minute and speaks traditional Japanese, but since the farthest I ever got in my pirated Rosetta Stone Japanese course was how to say I am drinking water, yeah, that'll really come in handy next time I visit Tokyo. Well, we can't talk to him. He just shouts at us in Japanese, and there's no skill checks to translate what he's saying, no universal translator the aliens use to let us talk to him. He is a total enigma, and therefore pretty useless for storytelling for any of us uneducated monolingual Americans who don't even speak good English.
We don't even speak good English.
He doesn't even speak good English.
Honestly, Elliot and his story arc is really the only part of this entire DLC that really feels fully fleshed out, but since he, like everyone else, just chooses to stay on the ship when all is said and done because there's no place left for him back on Earth, it's not even a bittersweet ending, it's just an ending. The rest of the characters felt rushed, incomplete, lazy, or wholly incompatible with the story they were inserted into. Many of the plot points, quest objectives, again, are pretty easy to forget. They're just Pips and the boy, marks on the compass, E's to press at the end of the dungeon dive, or A for you Xboxers, and you know what, just insert whatever shape your PlayStation controller uses to interact. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I think Mothership Zeta earns the very first one for storyline since I started this series. Oof, this is not looking good for my nostalgia. Alright, on to explorable area. For explorable area, we have the UFO crash site, which takes place inside the Commonwealth map, and Mothership Zeta. That's it. Now, I don't want to sound too negative here, so I'm just going to voice the few criticisms that I do have and then move on to the good stuff. Mothership Zeta is one of the smallest areas added in a DLC to any Fallout game. Sure, the Dead Money DLC in New Vegas is pretty small, and if you're counting Vault 88 as an expansion pack instead of a workshop add-on, then sure, Vault 88 has it beat. But Mothership Zeta also has one royal inconvenience that I really hate in DLCs to Bethesda games in particular, and that is the complete lack of fast travel. The base game lets you fast travel to any location you've previously discovered. The maps added in Point Lookout and the Pit allow fast travel between them, but Mothership Zeta, you can travel to the bridge from the Commonwealth and to the Commonwealth from the bridge. That's it. If you want to go anywhere on the ship, you have to wander around and find it yourself. That little crybaby gray moment out the airlock, Mothership Zeta's explorable area is actually pretty amazing when you consider what the rest of Fallout 3 looked like. I mean, when you're used to the dull green-gray rubble of the capital wasteland, the bright, well-lit, clean interiors of Mothership Zeta are a very welcome change of pace, and no two areas of the ship look the same. This isn't every cave in the capital wasteland looking the same, or all the metro tunnels blending together, or the unchanging deadness of the capital wasteland, the same interior of all vaults, etc. It's very apparent that you're in a different area of the ship entirely the moment you leave the holding cells and enter the steamworks, the primary reactor room, the medical research wing, weapons lab, waste disposal, death ray control. The whole ship changes to suit the needs of the room. They are purpose-built, and we often forget that when discussing Bethesda games in particular because we get so used to operating in one of a handful of interior cells and derive unique experience from the people and objects within that space. So even though we don't have the benefit of fast travel here, it's not as tedious as other areas of Fallout 3 where we lose the ability to fast travel by simple virtue of the environment constantly changing. Another point I want to make sure I bring up is that the ship changes according to your actions. I mean, it's sort of automatic, but in much the same way that the Far Harbor docks can slowly become more fortified due to your actions in Fallout 4's Far Harbor DLC, Mothership Zeta actually begins to experience a very noticeable change as well. Perhaps not for the better, but it's actually pretty hilarious to see. Every time you return to the engineering core, having completed one of your assigned tasks, you find piles of garbage forming in much the same way that people on the surface have started to just pile random crap they may need any place it'll fit. They're even doing it here in the engineering core while the reactor begins to spark and arc and fall into an obvious state of neglect due to you preventing the crew from performing regular maintenance. The lighting, the angles, this entire area wasn't just a copy and paste from the base game, it was an entirely unique experience, so while there are definite negatives, the small size of the expanded map also mitigates the frustration of not having lightning fast travel capabilities while on the ship, and exploring is actually pretty fun.
I love exploring.
Ugh, she ruined it. Explorable area 3 out of 5. Honestly, this DLC includes a lot of very useful items. The alien atomizers and disintegrators are pretty much superior in every way to vanilla plasma weapons, which are the closest equivalents in-game. There are also a few unique variants that further add to the superior performance of Zetan weaponry. But with that said, I personally never end up using them after this DLC because once I no longer have to fight shielded Zetan soldiers, I just prefer weapons that have instantaneous impacts versus slow projectiles that can be dodged. Most human weapons found throughout the ship, like Paulson's revolver and the samurai's sword, do more damage than any vanilla variant, but there are also going to be other items from other DLCs that give many of these a run for their money, and in order to get them, you either have to just kill your fellow captives off for bad karma or let them get killed due to your negligence if you want these items for yourself. But strictly speaking, that's not particularly hard. It's actually way more of a chore to keep these people alive. And what sort of wasteland messiah lets a perfectly boring and forgettable NPC die just so that they can run around in samurai armor? Some other useful items are the Alien Biogel, which is a healing item that will grant a random effect with each serving consumed. It might dose you with 5 rads, it might heal you 10 rads, it might dip your intelligence a point for a few seconds, or it might grant you 2 agility for a bit. It's all completely random, so good for a chaos playthrough if you're after that sort of thing. If you keep Elliot alive, he can convert Alien Biogels into Adapted Biogels, which have the same random effects, but offer 5 times as much restored HP, making it even more effective of a healing agent than Stimpaks. Like Stimpaks, the Alien and Adapted Biogels heal based on your medicine skill. There is also the Alien Epoxy, which serves the same basic function as a weapon repair kit from Fallout New Vegas, only it's completely weightless, so a very, very useful little item to stockpile, and there are over 100 littered throughout the ship, so you'll never have to pick up parts weapons for fixing what you already have ever again. I mean, most likely anyway. I'm guessing you saved this until most of the rest of Fallout 3 was already finished, so you're likely running out of stuff to do anyway. Then there are the alien crystals that litter shells, workbenches, and containers. These are a completely weightless item that serve no purpose whatsoever except that they are worth 10 to 20 caps depending on size. There are hundreds throughout the ship, and so thousands and thousands of caps worth of weightless objects that you can pack throughout the wasteland to trade for things you'll actually need. So all in all, even for my good karma, goody two-shoes characters I always play that tend to prefer to settle conflicts at a distance with a single shot, most of the wearable items from this DLC, they just don't get used. But I'd have to be intentionally obstinate to argue that they serve no purpose or underperform in some fashion, and given the fact that the 8 and miscellaneous items are second to none, I'm gonna do it. Adam knows this DLC needs a point boost. New object usefulness is getting a perfect 5 out of 5 points. You'd be forgiven for assuming that because you now have an alien spaceship in orbit crewed by people who all owe you a personal favor, that you now have an Archimedes-type orbital death ray at your beck and call. You'd be wrong. In reality, there's nothing the DLC does you can't do in the vanilla game. It may force you into certain styles of play you may have never planned for your character, such as kicking off with unarmed, transitioning to melee, and then very quickly foisting plasma weaponry on you for the duration in order to defeat the shielded enemies. There's a little battle sequence in the hangar bay where you use energy discharges from some pylons to throw aliens around like ragdolls and prevent them from reaching you, sort of like a little tower defense minigame. But once the dust settles, there's nothing, absolutely nothing this DLC does, short of the aforementioned objects like alien epoxy, biogel, and crystals, all of which tend to operate more or less the same fashion as vanilla objects do, so I don't know if I have an alternative without double dipping on my points. I think I have to do it. Expansion to gameplay mechanics is getting a 2 out of 5, and that's only because the sonic pylon thingy and the shielded enemies, which I despise because I'm a VAT spammer. But you could also make a case for 1 out of 5, but I'll stick with 2 for now. So just as a quick recap, Mothership Zeta gets a pitiful 1 point for storyline, 3 for explorable area, 5 for new object usefulness, and 2 for expansion to gameplay mechanics. For a total Graves Is It Good score of 11 out of 20, a 55% solid F paper, minus 5 points to Gryffindor. Believe it or not, this doesn't even make Mothership Zeta the worst of all DLC that I have ranked using the Graves Is It Good score to date. That lack of honor goes to the Automatron DLC from Fallout 4, and going back through my scripts to get the points for this list, I also discovered I used the exact same Harry Potter reference for Automatron. Apparently, I need to get some new material. Still, there's no danger whatsoever to good old Far Harbor, who's still top dog. But before you get all bent out of shape claiming the New Vegas DLC are perfect 20s each and every one, calm down, I'm working my way up to them, and you'd better believe it, they're coming soon. Now, none of this would be possible without the continued support of my patrons over at Patreon. The impact their direct contributions make to the continued operation of Gray Gaming cannot be understated. I don't have any new patrons this week, but as usual, I wanted to give a special salute to my officer tier patron, Carver050, and continued thanks to all my non-coms who keep the grunt tier on point. All Patreon funds are reserved for investment directly back into Gray Gaming's production costs. But if you can't swing a monthly Patreon membership, there are other ways to help the channel that don't cost a penny. If you enjoyed the video, a like would go a long way to help the channel, as viewer engagement is the primary metric I use to determine the sort of content that provides the most value to you, a random person on the internet who has the power to choose if I can afford a trip to Doc Church's office next time I have an accident, or if I have to slather some of this biogel stuff on and hope it doesn't tank my Intel stat. Until my next salute, stand at ease. Thank you so much for watching to the end, stay safe, and I hope to see you here next time on Gray Gaming.